So actually, I am a product of the Madison Public Schools. I went to Glenn Stevens Elementary, Jefferson Middle, Memorial High School, and then I went to UW-Madison for my undergraduate work, did my grad work up in La Crosse, came back to teach in Madison. So I started at Jefferson, which was my alma mater, which was really, really very exciting for me. My first year of teaching, I was teaching with my teachers. So that was kind of weird, you know? So Mr. LaPointe was now Ray, and I now shared a desk with Ray instead of him being my teacher. So, you know, I'm starting to feel really, really old because kids that I babysat, I'm meeting in staff meetings. And so it's like, oh, you know, but that's okay. It's very exciting. So this year is a change for me. So I left the classroom officially August something, but last spring. So I moved into the K-8 math teacher leader. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time framing a little bit of the discussion around math, and then talk about my classroom experiences with the Common Core. So I may be whipping through a couple of these slides because Tamara did a great job of talking about the core, and so I'm not going to dig into the same kind of material, but I do want to talk about all of the work that we're doing in the district is wrapped around this concept of great teaching. And so all of our plans that we're building go around this idea of planning, teaching, reflecting and adjusting, going back and doing more planning, more reflecting, more teaching. It's cyclical, but it's also kind of, it goes back and forth. The arrows are not completely linear as they work through that way. And with at the center, culturally and linguistically responsive practices. So really thinking about how can we get this out to kids in a way that is meaningful for them, that makes connections for them. Like you guys were talking about, how can these practices be living in our classroom? And so the district has used this as the frame, and the framework has 3 district priorities. The Common Core work lives in priority 1, which is coherent instruction. And so when we're talking about the Common Core work, we're talking about how can we be improving our instruction here. And then we have our Common Core 3-year plan, which Tamara talked a little bit about. We are in year 2, which for math is to continue the work. So it's more refinement, it's digging into the standards, it's becoming more familiar with them, helping teachers understand them, helping implement them in connection with our curriculum and make sure that we're in a place where we need to be with them. And then it really lives in the schools. And the schools this year have been given a lot of flexibility and parameters with how they're going to implement things and how they're going to be using the materials to help work best for their particular students in their building. And so all the work flows through the school improvement plan or their SIP plan. We are big on acronyms here, so if I use a set of letters that you don't understand, if I know what they mean, I'll tell you. No. I had to go back and remember GRUMPS. I'm like, grandparents, like, what's the U? Understanding? No, it's united. So I had to, so. Again, this is through the lens through which we look at all of this, is through great teaching. I used a Wordle for Common Core because there's lots of words that wrap around Common Core. And here I was going to talk a little bit about what they are. And as I said before, Tamara spent a lot of time talking about that. And so I'm not going to dig too deeply into it. But one of the things that I like about the Common Core is it does provide a very clear framework for us. It gives us a set of goals to shoot for. And I like that it's consistent across not the entire nation, but most of the nation. It really offers us lots of opportunities within our district, but also to reach out to other districts. And that's been a really great, amazing thing, because I think sometimes we as teachers, we're reinventing the wheel all the time to make it better. And it's so great to go and look at other people's wheels. You know, gosh, somebody else made this, and I really like it, or I like 90% of it, so I'm going to borrow it and make it my own and make it work for my kids. And so when we had all these different standards floating around the different states, it really made it more difficult to have some of those conversations. And so I think this offers us that flexibility as well with that. They give us not only content standards, but also practice standards that we're going to talk about very specific to math. There are 3 big shifts specifically with the Common Core in math. The first one is a focus. And this shift is that greater focus on fewer topics. And I know we've heard before, oh, you know, a mile wide, an inch deep. We're trying to stop the mile wide, inch deep, move it in, and go deeper. So really focusing on what are the key ideas that these kids need to be knowing here to get them here, to get them here. And so that's one of the big shifts, and standards help us to identify those. The other one is coherence. And, well, actually, before I think about that, in addition to the focus, there is this procedural fluency that you alluded to before. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's not a focus on procedures. It's a focus on conceptual understanding. Kids have got to understand concepts. It is not as you will need to say 2 plus 2 is 4, say 2 plus 2 is 4. Now say 2 plus 4 is 2 is 4, 2 plus 4 is 2 is 4. That's not where we're going. We're going for understanding the big picture, understanding and looking at how can we efficiently show our understanding. Sometimes that might be through an algorithm. Sometimes it might be through a picture. Sometimes it might be through something different. So we are looking at procedures, but it's through the lens of conceptual understanding. Coherence is linking topics across grades and thinking across grades. And when they built this, they did not build it actually with the grades in mind. When they looked at the content standards to start out, especially in math, they did not assign grade bands to them. They talked about, this is where we wanted kids move from here to here. And it wasn't until they really started to talk, get the big picture done, that they started to break it up and where do we see this move into the grade bands. So this idea of coherence is this set of skills and understandings that move K-12. And the rigor. Rigor involves, again, the conceptual understanding, procedural skills and fluency, and the ability to apply. And I think that is the biggest piece. Take whatever you're learning and apply it to all kinds of different situations. And I think this, for us, gives us some really cool opportunities with our peers to collaborate. There's been a much deeper focus in the last few years on meeting with your peers, talking through and trying to figure out what's the best way to get at kids, and understanding through these, lots of different opportunities for collaboration. So I think the core brings that as well. When I talk about coherence, they organized the math learnings into domains. And you can see that some of them flow K-12. Now this is only K-8 because the high schools organize a little bit differently, but the K-8 strands are organized by grade level. But geometry goes all the way through 8th grade. Every year we're expecting kids to work with geometric concepts. Now it looks different in kindergarten than it does in 8th grade. But conceptually we're expecting kids to be able to do those skill sets all the way through their K-8 learnings. Some are what are called captured, which means by the end of kindergarten, we would hope that kids understand counting and cardinality. So when they say if there's a bar there, we're kind of saying that skill set and those understandings should be captured at that point. So you see some things kind of end, but not really. They change names. For example, you would not think that by the end of 5th grade, kids really, oh yeah, we're good at fractions. We don't even talk about this anymore. Kids understand fractions, we're good to go. No. Fractions moves into rational proportional thinking. So we're using our understanding of conceptual fractions to start working more with the operations with them and applying them in different kinds of situations. But it gives us a bar to say, kids, by the end of 5th grade, we really want to make sure that their conceptual understanding of fractions is strong. Okay. This is one of the big shifts for us in mathematics, is we're really trying to work on, as some of these skill sets and conceptual understandings have moved, and in most cases moved down a little bit, how are we going to be able to get our teachers and our kids at maybe 5th grade who have not maybe seen this before until 6th grade or even 7th grade, how are we going to make that all happen? So that's where these conversations are happening right now, to make sure that Common Core gives us this set of captured areas. How are we going to meet those needs? And so those are our challenges, but they're also very, very exciting, I think. This, just so you know, this graphic doesn't necessarily always perfectly lead from one to another. So for example, measurement and data does lead into statistics and probability, but this kind of leads into here. This kind of leads into here. But it's not a perfectly fluid movement because we start taking things and being able to apply multiple skill sets, multiple understandings to different instruments as they get deeper. For me, as a classroom teacher, in middle school math, we've been working with, we had the model academic standards for many, many years. We've been working with standards for years in middle school, trying to make sure that we've been aligned with whatever standards have been in place, and it's felt like they changed a lot. Not in terms of the standards, but often they've been, well, look at this, now look at this, now try this. So I'm really excited that Common Core feels like, this is going to be here for a while. We have somewhere we can really ground ourselves in. It's a big picture thing. It gives us a place to really dig into. And beyond the content standards, we have these mathematical practice standards. And for me, these are the game changers. As a teacher, these standards, to me, are the how do we teach the kids. The content standards are the what. The practice standards are what do we value about kids understanding? How do we want them to understand fractions? What do we want them to be able to do with linear equations? We want them to be able to talk about it. We want them to be able to show it. We want them to be able to stick with it when it's not an easy problem. So these mathematical practice standards don't have a capture date. These are the same K-12. So whether you're a kindergartner or whether you're a sophomore in high school, these are the way that we're trying to instruct you in mathematics. These are the things that we want you to be able to do. These don't just apply to mathematics. And that's one of the things that I like about them, is that these are just life skills. We're applying them to the content in mathematics. Some of them are more specific to mathematics, but they're big picture ideas about how, as a student, do we want you to be able to perform. So if we're doing a narrative, how do I talk about your piece and explain why I disagree with something that you wrote? How am I constructing a viable argument and critiquing your work and not you? Okay, how do we do that? How do we do that with mathematics? Your answer's wrong. Why? It's just wrong. Because it's not the same answer I got. Well, talk to me some more about that. So, as a teacher, the work around this is how do we learn the kinds of questions to ask? How do we guide students' thinking as they're working in our classrooms? We have to understand our content very, very well so we can know in advance what kinds of things the kids are going to misunderstand and how to ask the kinds of questions to get them to own the learning. That cognitive load that they talk about is that they need to own the cognitive load, not me. So it's got to transfer to them. So how do we get that to happen in a way that is getting them to own the thinking and own the learning and be able to show their understanding? So for me as a classroom teacher, these mathematical practices were huge.